Hey everyone, it's your friend and colleague Jesse Green. You're listening to the Savvy Dentist podcast, and today I'm joined by Luke Mathers, who is an expert when it comes to dealing with stress and strain in the workplace, and he's got a really curious and interesting backstory which we're going to unpick and unravel and get the lessons out of his business journey, but also take these lessons and help you apply them in your practice. Luke, thanks so much for hanging out with us today, mate. How's things with you?
Things are good, Jesse. Thanks for having me. This looks like it's going to be fun.
I think so too. Now, mate, you're an optometrist by profession and you spent a lot of years doing optom. What was that like, and how did you kind of, from that to this is quite a journey. I'm interested to understand what happened.
Yeah, it is a weird one. I was part of the original team that started Specsavers in Australia, brought Specsavers to Australia. I owned one of their practices in the UK. I'm an optometrist, so I've asked which one's clearer, this one and that one, about 8.5 million times.
Yeah.
So if you guys, dentists out there, if you think dentistry is boring, try asking the same question 8.5 million times and see how you go.
God, yeah.
But I owned one of their practices in the UK in my late 20s and sold it when I was about 31 and moved back to Australia. And basically looked at it and went, wow, I'm minted, I don't have to work anymore. Isn't that great? And that seemed like a really good idea because they'd worked my butt off and worked really hard. And then worked out within about 12 or 18 months that I was bored out of my head and miserable. So sort of saddled back up and started another practice and did it again. And then Specsavers came to Australia and they came and knocked and said, look, we're going to come here and we need someone who's Australian to help us sell the dream. So I was part of a very large team, but went around the country and signed up practices to be part of it and then convert their practices into Specsavers. And we opened 100 stores in 100 days, which was the biggest retail rollout in Australia's history. It was ridiculously stressful.
Yeah.
But it was also the most fun time I can ever remember. It was just great. Loved it. All the challenges and all the fun things that were going on with 100 different teams and trying to work out how that works. Because it's a franchise sort of model. So, yeah, you've got lots of people who are business owners like the people that listen to us. And how to then coordinate all of them and get them all on the bus. And then what happened to them afterwards was a really interesting concept too.
Yeah. Mate, you've already given me about 3 or 4 conversational threads I'd like to just explore. And I'm probably, if it's okay with you, I'm going to actually explore the least likely one up front because it's a question that's really prominent in my mind. I've been talking about this with a couple of people, but I won't labour on. I promise we'll get to all the Specsavers and the rollout in a second. But you said you minted at 31 and within 12 or 18 months you realised you were miserable. I want to just actually understand that because there's so many people who think, when I retire, I will be happy, right? And they go
when
from,
I ... then ... Yeah,
exactly, right. So I want to understand the when I ... and the fallacy of all of that. So can we just talk a little bit about your experience with that?
yeah. It's something that's happened a few times. You sort of think, oh, when I achieve whatever I want to achieve, everything's going to be great.
Yeah.
And there's something about if you wake up and you've just achieved all your dreams, you're actually waking up without a dream, and that kind of sucks.
Yes.
And so where do I go? And it was where the seed of what we need to be able to be stressed Teflon came from, because being stressed Teflon is being able to thrive and have the challenges and really embrace them without getting overwhelmed by them. So how to make stress not stick to us. And if you haven't got something that you're really working towards, that gets a little bit harder. But then I call it top of the mountain syndrome, that once I've got to the top of the mountain, then everything's going to be great. And no, it's like trying to chase the horizon. You're never going to get there. And even when you do, the view's not as good as you thought it was and you got to walk back down again. So I think particularly, I'm in my mid-50s now. So you look around and think, oh, yeah, I'm just going to get to retirement. And you might be wasting a decade of just sheer joy in seeing happiness on the other side of some cognitive horizon that you're never going to get to. So I think that idea that when I have X, it might be X dollars, it might be X number of practices, it might be X anything, then I'll be happy, I think is doing us an injustice. So I think it's much more important to find how I get happy along the way.
Yeah. It's really interesting. And the reason I'm asking is I've got a couple of clients we work with who achieved enormous goals really quickly, really early in life. And they're in their 30s and they're minted and they're kind of going, okay, what's next? And it's a genuinely difficult topic for them to countenance and to kind of go, I'm doing really well financially. How do I summon the energy and the drive and the motivation to keep pushing through when I could just sit back and coast for a while? And so I think it's a really good question.
Yeah, for me anyway, and everyone's going to be different with this,
Sure.
that lots of us are achievement addicts, that
Yes.
I'm going to get my fix if I achieve a certain goal and do a certain things. And I was certainly that. I wanted to have the number one store in the country and all of that sort of stuff and got it. And every time just felt great for about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, let's saddle up and do it again.
Yeah.
Right. And each time you saddle up and do it again, it doesn't quite have the same amount of joy. But to be able to work out, I think sometimes one thing we don't do is get curious about the parts of it we like. I
Yes.
think we can dig a hole, and I dare say dentistry is the same. I don't know, but you're in a fairly small room with one other person digging around in someone's gob. I reckon that's probably a little bit similar to asking which one's clearer, number one and two, and looking in eyes all day.
Yeah.
And if you just focus on that, and I think some people like to focus on being the best dentist they can be and be technically great. And a lot of optometrists did that. And I think those guys burn out a little bit quicker. I think the ones that don't burn out and the ones that actually thrive and keep going forever and build practices with like just raving fans for patients, those are the ones that actually care about Mrs. Jones's petunias. Those are the ones that remember that Mr. Phillips' son played football for someone and can actually connect on a more personal level. And it's a bit hard when you've got instruments sticking in people's gobs because you can't really have a chat very well. But I think both of these professions, and doctors do the same thing, you think of the things you can do for influence and we double down on authority and we forget about things like likability and scarcity and reciprocity and do all these other things that can help us connect. And we just be the expert on teeth or the expert on eyes.
Yeah, I think you're really right. There's a person attached to the teeth and to the eyes as well. And that's where I think the joy comes from. In my experience in practice is I got a little bored with the clinical work, and that's just me. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but for me, the joy of practice came from Mrs. Jones and the petunias and getting to know her, getting to know her kids, and then subsequently grandkids and all that sort of stuff. And it's nice. And it does
Good
bring
practice builder too, man. Being that guy, they're going to recommend you a lot better than if you're really good with a drill.
Oh, yeah.
If you've got the best x-ray machine in the whole world, that's not getting you any referrals. You be a nice person and you connect with Mrs. Jones and learn something about petunias, then she's going to want to come back and she's going to tell her friends to come back and she's going to bring her kids. And that's how you build a practice that becomes bulletproof in the end. And I don't think we think about that enough. Like, you think about continuing education. We double down on that shit like it's going out of fashion.
Yeah.
And it's good. You need to be competent. But the ability to connect with the person is a way bigger practice builder than the ability to get better skills at being a dentist.
Yeah, 100%, mate. 100%. So thank you for allowing me to dive into that topic for a minute, because I think that's actually really useful and it's very pertinent at the moment for some of our listeners. I want to talk on the Specsavers thing, 100 stores, 100 days, epic. Like, that's just mad, right? That is absolute madness, candidly.
They had a really big, really competent team that came from all around the world. They also had very deep pockets because they've been the number one business in the UK for years and years and years. So they had fairly deep pockets that they could do some of that stuff where money wasn't as much of an issue. Because they needed critical mass. Because remember, that was 2008.
Yeah.
And back then, if you wanted to market, you had to go on telly. Marketing is a bit more democratic now with all things like socials and stuff like that. So you don't need to... It doesn't need to go out on TV, but to get on TV, you had to have critical mass. So that was the founder, Doug Perkins. That was his thing when he came, because he came here for the first couple of years and really drove it. He was like 75 or 70 at the time, and was just an amazing ball of energy that just kept everyone on the bus and flowing. So that helped. But you've got to be able to sort of get everyone into it as well as you can, and he did that really well.
Yeah. So you spoke about stress Teflon, and I'm imagining in that period of time when all these stores are being launched, there would have been stress, there would have been some high emotions, there would have been all of the above going on, and there's just a lot to do in a short space of time. So talk me through what that was like. How did that go, and how did that shape your thinking about the work you do now?
Yeah, it was a weird one. I looked around about probably 5 years into it, and looked at different businesses and looked at them. In optometry, it's a bit more retail than you guys are.
Yeah.
And so you can see, location is a pretty important thing. And you looked at some of them were in a great location and doing really shit numbers. Other ones were in a way less good location and just kicking ass. They were going great. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And I went into these practices and I looked at it. And the ones that were in the great location and weren't living up to their potential, all of them had put systems and processes and stuff that stopped them getting busier. They got too stressed by it being too busy. So what they did is they put limitations on it so that they couldn't get too busy and keep it under control. The ones that did really well, yeah, they might say, okay, well, we're gonna block out appointments so you can't book appointments in there because we don't want our optometrist to get too frazzled. Whereas the ones that did it well just went, okay, well, how can you maybe test eyes a little bit faster? Yep. And the ones that did that worked out how to test eyes a little bit faster without looking rushed. That idea of talk slowly and work fast is a really good concept in that situation because it's a volume game in Specsavers. It's very much about numbers and bums on seats.
Yeah.
So the ones that could do the numbers quickly, effectively, and didn't feel rushed and didn't feel stressed, they could just keep going and going and finding the next level. The ones that got too stressed about it, they found ways to put the brakes on.
Yeah. Do you think that was conscious? Do you think they realized they were putting the brakes on, or did they just think they were managing their assets better?
They were managing their stress. That's exactly what they were doing.
Yeah.
They were definitely, I've got to make sure I'm not going to get to, this happens and it's a problem, so I'm going to put this process in place to stop that problem.
Yeah,
Whereas there's always another way to solve problems. Whatever problem comes your way, there's another way to do it. And the way that the good ones did was worked out, well, how do I make this more efficient? How do I make it so I can do the numbers and take everyone that comes in the door and make sure we rest on purpose, make sure that we turn up to work as the best version of us. And you guys have a lot of business leaders that listen to your podcast, and that stuff flows downstream. If you're not looking after yourself, if you're not happy going into work and you're going in kicking stones, everyone is going to be miserable.
Yeah.
So the good ones also learnt how to recover on purpose and make sure that when they came into work, they were fired up, ready to go. And the good ones were able to control their emotions, that were able to deal with whatever came our way.
So that's actually something I'd like to explore. First, there's again another half a dozen threads of conversation right there.
We could chat for days, mate.
I know you're a podcaster's dream, mate. I mean, you keep giving me all these things to talk about. It's amazing. It's great. What I wanted to ask you about was showing up as your best version of yourselves. Now, obviously, when you say that out loud, everyone goes, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I get it. But I want to ask the dumb question up front. Why does that matter in the first place? And then the follow-up question is, okay, now that we've established that it matters, because when people say, oh, it matters, it's all very superficial stuff. Oh, so I can be nice and whatever. But I want to ask that question from 2 points of view. One is the impact on those around you, but also the internal impact. And then I want to ask for some practicalities around how do you show up as your best self?
Can I start with the last part of that first? You've kind of got to know what the best version of you looks like.
Yeah.
All right. And you've got to know what he's like and how he is. And to be really honest, in the last probably 2 years I was doing it, I'd written a book, I'd done a lot of talks. I speak at conferences a lot and I run workshops that teach people how to get good at stress and how to fire up and how to build teams. And I love doing it. It's just like lights me up. I just can't wait to go and do it again.
Yeah.
I wasn't feeling like that about going into a 3x3 room and asking which one's clearer, number one or number two. So I wasn't too happy with that. And I have a process I do with my coaching clients in workshops. And it's called Finding Carlos. And Carlos is my alter ego. He's the best version of me. Yeah. And I'm really clear about what the best version of me looks like. All right. And we do this process called Finding Carlos, which I'll talk to you about another day. But I came up with what I call my trademark trait. So what are the 3 or 4 things that if you are acting like that and behaving like that, you're happy as a pig in shit?
Yep.
Be interested to hear. I'll tell you mine, and I'd love to actually hear yours too, Jesse, because if we can get it off the top of your head. But mine are, I'm curious, creative, and generous. So if I'm being curious, creative, and generous, I'm as happy as a pig in shit. All right. I think about, say I'm not getting on very well with my wife. We've been married for 30 years and we go, all right, am I being curious about her point of view? Am I being creative about finding a solution to whatever problem we've got? And am I being generous with my time and my energy? And if we're not getting on well, there is no way I'm turning up as those 3.
Yeah.
So I've got to accept some of that. So once you're really clear about what your infinite goals are, what the trademark traits, how the best version of you looks, then you can actually make sure you turn up as that. And there was a shopping centre here called Pacific Fair, which is where I had my last practice. I had about 8 practices all over the journey. And there's a doorway that's about 100 metres from my practice.
Yep.
And every time I walked through that doorway, that was my trigger that I had to turn up as Carlos. And I had a 100-metre walk to get into the right mindset to walk into there. How am I going to be curious about how I can serve the needs of every customer I come across? How I can be creative about teaching my staff better ways to do that and leading really well? And how can I be generous with my time and my energy to everyone I see that day? And when I turned up as Carlos, when I turned up satisfying those trademark traits, I actually enjoyed the day. I wasn't looking forward to going to work. I was kicking stones on the way in there and being a bit of a sook. But once I got in there and had that 100 metres to get into the right front, I then walked in, come on guys, how are we all doing? Let's have a good day today, blah, blah, blah. And I was me and I actually enjoyed it again.
Yeah. It's really interesting you say that. And you asked me for my character traits.
Well, can I just digress a little bit?
Yeah.
What's a couple of traits of you that you don't ever want to change is another way to probably put it. I always want to be this. What would that look like for you, Jesse?
Is the word that comes to mind. Kind is one.
Nice.
And patient. And when I'm not at my best, I'm neither kind nor am I patient. Curious is another one that I'd put in there as well. Curiosity is an important thing.
Curious, kind, and patient. I like that.
Yeah. And so that's when I'm at my best, I'm doing that. But equally, when I'm not at my best, those 3 traits are not so evident. But what's really interesting that you spoke about it, a friend of mine who's a hairdressing salon coach, actually, her name's Lisa, and she's wonderful. She has a similar process to you. She doesn't have a 100-metre walk though. She's got the doorway that she walks through, and she calls it walking through the shit shaver. Similar concept. So I've got to shave off all my shit before I go to work, and I don't want to take my crap to work, basically. So I've got to leave it behind on the other side of the doorway before I cross the threshold. And so I quite like both of those concepts. And of course, it's the shit shaver, but it's a common thing in sports as well. Yeah, they talk about white line fever and all those sorts of things. So I think you're right. It's assuming a persona or the best version of yourself. Carlos, in your case, I haven't got a cool name like Carlos. That's really cool.
You need one, mate.
I know.
Yeah, Carlos is awesome.
You need a good mo with that, though, mate.
If you got video here, I might even have a little picture.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. What would Carlos do?
There you go. What would Carlos do?
Oh, I love it.
And
that's cool.
There's something about it. I love the idea of evolutionary biology, and we do different things because cavemen did different things.
Yeah.
And one of the things about us is we have our old emotional brain and then our new thoughtful brain. And our thoughtful brain can predict the future. It has nuance. It has subtlety. Our emotional brain is on or it's off. It doesn't have any nuance. It doesn't have shades of grey. And what they discovered, a guy called Ethan Kross from University of Chicago did some really good research, and they put people in fMRIs and they got them to tell stories normally, and then they got them to tell the same stories in the third person. And when they told it in the third person, their emotional brain downregulated and their new brain upregulated. So they actually made more conscious decisions when they're talking in the third person. And so by talking to yourself in the third person, and I've thrown the alter ego on there as well, it connects your emotional brain and your smart brain together. So your whole brain's going to work to serve you in whatever way it needs to. And when your emotional brain gets hijacked and it does all the work, that's when stress starts to stick. And that's when you might get the original stress, and then you get the stress from your reaction, which wasn't ideal. And all of that can snowball. By putting our brains back together, we don't get the snowball. And then what we also do is we make a decision that's not just a reaction, but it's a choice, and it's something we've done deliberately. And using alter ego in third person works for that really well.
And so that's obviously where you're getting the emotional regulation part, right? Is that correct?
Absolutely.
So it's really interesting because I think emotional regulation, or temperance, if you want to use a different word.
Yeah, I love the Stoics, so go with temperance. I love it.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say, Stoic philosophy. So
this isn't you. They were talking about it 2,500 years ago. So we're not making any of this up, Jesse.
No, totally. Yeah, Marcus Aurelius, back in his Meditations book, was writing about it and all that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, you've spoken about alter ego, you've spoken about third person speaking, and obviously that's a way of cultivating temperance or emotional regulation. How else can you better regulate your emotions? Because one of the things with dentistry is the work is demanding, physically demanding. You're working in small spaces. sometimes the mouth will open that much, sometimes it'll open that much. If you're lucky,
Yeah.
you've got all the patient's emotions that they're projecting out because people
Mm-hmm.
are generally pretty scared to go to the dentist, or they're uncomfortable, or frankly, no one wants to be there. And so you're kind of absorbing all of their stuff, trying to deal with the difficulty of the procedure that you're doing because it's not easy work. I
Yep.
wanted to just ask you how else to cultivate that emotional regulation, because there are times I remember, I don't do so much dentistry these days, but there've been times when I've just wanted to walk out and kick the dog kind of routine if there was a,
Yeah.
not really because I love my dog, but the point.
Well, it's actually, they've done some really cool research. A guy from Stanford called Robert Sapolsky did some research on baboons. And the fastest way to get the stress level of a baboon down is for the baboon to go and pick on a smaller baboon. So picking on someone else, yelling at your assistant, yelling at your receptionist, kicking the dog, all of
Yeah,
those things are pretty ordinary ways to control your stress.
yeah,
So to be able to work out what's another few ways. And I used to go hammer and tongs. I used to be like, prided myself and I can go harder than everyone else. I can go longer than everyone else. Breaks are for wimps, all of that sort of stuff.
yeah.
That I mostly did that because I'm an idiot. And I actually had a guy that came and worked with me. He was a bit of one of these sort of hippie knobs that loved beads and used crystals as deodorant and that sort of stuff, which I didn't probably agree with quite so well. But one of the things he would do is he would close the door and he'd just meditate for a minute or two. I used to call them having belly burgers. So I'd lie on the ground in my room and I'd just breathe into my stomach. So breathe into my diaphragm. And your
Yeah.
diaphragm links straight to the connection between that old and new brain that we talked about and actually strengthens that connection. So just stopping between patients for even 2 minutes and just sitting in the chair and lying there and just breathing in and out through your stomach will stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system, and then sort of get up, take a breath and say, okay, I'm good to go. And then see the next person. You're better off running 2 minutes late and being in the right state than you are running 2 minutes earlier and being cranky and not being good. And they're going to read that.
Yeah.
People will sort of smell your state. If you
Yes.
like, they'll get it.
Yeah.
A friend of mine who's more in the public speaking thing, he has a saying that I really love, and it's state matters more than script. So the state you're in matters a lot more than what you're doing or what you're saying. So I think to be able to regulate your own emotions, there's probably 3 ways to do it in the moment. One of them is breathing, and breathing into your stomach. If you breathe into the top of your chest, that actually fires you up even more. So breathe into your stomach. Your chest isn't all the same. The top part of your chest is sympathetic. The bottom part is parasympathetic. So being able to breathe into the bottom part of your chest can work. Eye movements work. So if you're doing very focused things as a dentist, so you're only using central vision. So
Yes.
using your peripheral vision, looking up, looking around, all of that will actually calm the farm a little bit. And the other one is movement.
Yeah,
So if you
okay.
do have a break, don't sit there and look at Instagram. Go for a walk.
Yeah.
So movement, eye movement, and breath are probably the 3 best ones to use in the moment to actually get your state where it needs to be to perform at your best when the next patient comes.
Yeah, I really appreciate that because it is stressful, and you're going through things and stuff doesn't always go to plan. So having those strategies in your toolkit is really key. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about short-term stress versus long-term stress, if I can, because these things in the moment, if they're not addressed properly, they accumulate and it becomes a heavier burden to bear over time. How do you look at things from a longer term perspective, longevity in your career kind of point of view? And you spoke about it a moment ago. I used to be like a machine and run really hard and all that sort of stuff. And me too, I used to kind of think, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Then I realized that if I don't sleep, I will be dead and I'll get
The
plenty.
Bon Jovi philosophy of life.
Yeah. And I used to kind of, wear as a badge of honor. And one of the things, sorry, I'm going off on a small rant.
Change it away, brother. This will be fun.
Well, because I'm mid-50s too. I'm 54 now. And one of the things I've noticed about turning 50 is my body doesn't want to do the things it was able to do when I was 34, right? And my body is 20 years older, and I'm having to adjust how I interact with my work.
Yep.
And the reason I'm bringing this up, there's going to be a whole bunch of people listening to this who are 34 going, whatever, old timer. But I'd love to be able to save them some of the hassles and the pains that perhaps those of us a bit older might have gone through. So I'm hoping we might be able to give them a few words of wisdom from the mid-50s back to the mid-30s.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks. Good question, Grandpa. That was great.
Yeah. least you didn't call me boomer. That's all I'm grateful for.
Yeah, yeah, we're not boomers yet, mate. We're okay.
Yeah.
But a good friend of mine, a fellow by the name of Adam Fraser, did some really cool research at Deakin University. And what he did is they asked people which generation did they think was more resilient. Were they more resilient as millennials and Gen Zs, or were the Gen Xers and baby boomers and the silent generation, were they more resilient? And everyone was saying that the older generations were more resilient. Then what they did is they did the science and worked out, well, who is more resilient? And it turns out there's no difference.
Yeah.
That the younger people are just as resilient as their older counterparts. What we have now, we don't have a resilience problem, we have a recovery problem.
Oh, okay.
All right. And Adam said that line to me in a conference I was speaking at, and he was speaking before me at. And I've just gone, wow, we don't have a resilience problem, we have a recovery problem. So one of the things about it, if you want to have predictable performance and be at the best you can be every single day that you're next to that chair and dealing with people, you've got to make sure that you're recovering on purpose.
Yeah.
And so you've got to work out what that looks like. If you know, like we have, you guys would probably have it too, where your year's health fund runs up in December. And so from November onwards, you're just batshit crazy. Are you guys the same?
Yeah,
Like, use it or lose it in optics land.
I know I haven't been in for the last 12 months, but, I need to get this done before Christmas.
Yeah, I'm going to go between Christmas and New Year because that's a great idea. They won't be busy then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So one of the things you do if you were taking your recovery on purpose, you'd make sure you had a holiday sort of mid-November. You'd make sure you have another one booked for February so that I can go hammer and tongs because I know I've got a holiday booked in February.
Yeah.
And be able to say, this is a season of me working hard.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. And you might say no to a couple of social events because I need to be able to function and all that sort of stuff. This is my busy time. We're going to make hay while the sun shines.
Yeah.
And to be okay that it's not forever and it's just a season of being busy.
Yeah.
That sort of thing helps. A little cadence of little recoveries, little micro resets, which is something that's just about getting your biology right in the moment. And then when you don't do things like scroll on Instagram and don't do those things that drip feed dopamine and stress into your system when you're having a break. Actually go and walk in nature and do something you actually enjoy. Like I'm a golf nut, so I'd go and play golf on my day off.
Oh,
and
nice.
that was great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So what are the things that I actually get enjoyment from and do them? And then once a month have like half a day and I have nothing to achieve. If I just want to watch Netflix, I can do that. If I want to go for a walk, but I'm not trying to power walk my way to whatever. Just do something that's a recovery. And the beauty of that is we prioritize our recovery. We can then turn up as the best version, and we're clear about what the best version of us looks like. We can turn up at that, and then we get predictable performance. And we're engaged. We're not resenting going to work. We're not going to work with a victim mentality. Oh, poor me, I'm so busy. Look at me go. And that'll give you a little dopamine hit, but it doesn't help.
Nah.
So how do I actually turn up speaking to myself really well?
Yeah. I think that's the thing is if you kind of get into the negativity of I'm so busy, it becomes a bit of a pity party as well. And negativity breeds negativity. And I just think that if you're going to be the product of your environment, you want to create the best possible environment that you can. So as you say.
And it's going to flow down from you. If you're a business owner, it's going to flow down from you. So you can't expect everyone else to turn up as the best version of themselves. If you're coming in hungover and cranky and kicking stones and not wanting to be there, they're all going to smell that. They're all going to know that that's going on. They're going to sense it. And we have little mirror neurons and stuff in our brain that we're going to reflect that back to you. I remember once I had 2 staff members that were studying at uni and they'd just finished uni, but they hadn't started their new proper jobs yet. And we were sitting around, we'd had a record day and they were sitting around and everyone was chatting, oh, that was a great day, blah, blah, blah. And they were saying, I just got so many cranky patients. I had cranky patients all day. They were just awful. And everyone else has gone, oh, I didn't. That was all weird. And the 2 of them were talking. And both of them, we worked out, didn't want to be there anymore because they were ready to start their new career. And every patient that talked to them sensed that and gave it back with some interest and wondered why their day was miserable.
Yeah.
So people are going to mirror us. So if we're not turning up as the best version of us, we're behaving like we don't want to be there, that's going to make our day miserable. But it's also going to make our patients kind of think, yeah, I'm not going to go and see Jesse again. He's a cranky bastard. I'm going to go somewhere else.
Yeah. What I wanted to ask you, mate, is we've spoken a little bit about showing up as the best version of yourself and putting yourself in the position to be able to do that. I wanted to ask you about coping with an acutely difficult situation. Now, I'm talking about life events, could be because bad stuff happens, right? It could be someone gets
Yeah.
really ill, someone passes away. Have you got any thoughts about what that recovery looks like from those big events as compared to the day-to-day stress that we all encounter? But I want to talk about the big stuff.
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's probably a podcast on its own. But one of the books I wrote, it's called Resets, tiny little book, and you can actually get that free on my website if you want to have a read of it. We had a friend of my daughter's take her own life with suicide,
Oh, it's
and
just,
it was awful. It was around about the time that 13 Reasons Why, I don't know if you saw that show, was on Netflix and everyone was watching that. And I do mental health first aid and stuff like that, so I understand mental health pretty well. And when something like that happens, the chances of one of her other friends taking their own life are significantly higher. And the idea of having a suicide cluster amongst my daughter and her friends is just horrific.
yeah.
And so we pulled all the kids together and all that sort of stuff. It was an awful time. But one of the things that came out of it a few months later is that Zara, who died, her best friend was Ali. And Ali confided in me one day that she was really struggling and it was really difficult for her, and she'd lost her best friend and she felt guilty and all of those things you'd expect when a tragedy like that happens. And her and I said, look, I know a fair bit about this stress and mental health stuff. And she's a really, really good writer. She would have won writing prizes at school. So we wrote the book together.
Yep.
So I wrote a book, A Stress Teflon for Teenagers, with a teenager.
Oh, wow.
And one of the things she did is she belted the nerd out of me a little bit, and I sort of didn't go quite as heavy into things like neurochemicals and all of that sort of stuff. So I didn't go quite into neurotransmitters and all of this sort of crap. And we just sort of went, what's the things we can say to ourselves? And the things she came up with was catch, wait, and reset. All right, catch, wait, and reset. And it's just so simple. I've used it every day since. And
Oh,
then
wow.
we all get to a little fork in the stress road where something bad happens, right? And it might be something little and short term, or it might be something horrendous. But to catch the physical sign that you feel stress, what would yours be, Jesse? If you were feeling stress, what would the physical sign be for you?
I can usually feel it in my stomach. I can just start
Yeah.
to feel. I can't.
Sort of knots
quite
in your stomach, like you're going to get on a roller coaster, that sort of feeling?
Yeah. And then I'll
Yeah.
wake up if I go to bed and I wake up with that knot, and then I go,
Yeah.
I just want to start the day that way.
Something's
so
not
yeah,
working.
something's not working.
That one actually makes sense because stress hormones, your cortisol and adrenaline, cortisol particularly, is a prioritizing hormone. So it prioritizes fight or flight. So if you want to box on or run, you need different things turned on and other things turned off. And
Yep.
one of the things that turns off is digestion.
Yeah. Okay.
We don't need to process lunch if we're running away from a tiger and going to be its lunch.
Yep. True.
So things that it makes sense that your blood flow is going away from your stomach, and that's actually where the butterflies in your stomach are coming from.
yeah.
So
Okay.
catch, wait, and reset would be to understand what your alarm bell going off in your body to say this is something stressful. And one of the problems with that is that if an alarm's going off all the time, you don't hear it anymore. It's a bit like living near a highway or living near the airport.
Yeah.
You don't hear the planes after a while. So you've got to have times where you're having quiet time that you can actually calm the system down so that when stress happens, you hear it and you actually can behave in a way that you need to. So that's the catch, to understand. And the catch might be a physical sign. It might be a self-talk sign.
Yep.
What's the story I'm telling myself here that's not serving me? To be able to catch that as well.
Yes.
Wait stands for what am I thinking?
Okay.
So when I ask what am I thinking, it's a way of getting my emotional old brain and my new brain back together.
Right. Okay.
And then the bit that Ali came up with was reset. And reset, like when your computer is overloaded, is Control-Alt-Delete. We press Control-Alt-Delete, a computer shuts down and you open up whatever you like. So and it goes back to some of that stoicism stuff. Epictetus said this 2,500 years ago, so it's not a new thing, but waste no time on worrying about things you can't control. So what can I control in this situation? What can't I? And I'm going to do the things I can control that will mitigate the bad stuff. But if I can't control it, I can't control it. Alternatives, we've got to have awareness, and then you have options. Which way am I going to go? And the hassle is we often just go down our default option, whether that's the best road or not. We go down that default option and then we make an excuse of why we did that instead of something else. So to actually stop when the stressful things happen and actually decide which way you're going to go. So the alternative is know at least one or two alternatives of what I can do and how I can react here.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to choose the one that's going to serve me. And then the delete is what things do I need to get rid of? And I need to get rid of things like resentment and victim sort of mentality and all of that sort of stuff. And if I can do that, what can I control? What are my alternatives and what do I need to delete? All of a sudden, I've got this 3-step little process that puts my brain back together. And that doesn't mean my father passed away 18 months ago. It doesn't mean I wasn't sad. But it was like, there's nothing I can do to control about that. He had bowel cancer and he died. And it was really, really sad. But one of the things I can control is I looked at his life and thought he died without giving all his gifts. I don't think the world saw the best of him. And that actually was a bit of a wake-up call to me to sort of say, well, is the world getting the best of you? Are you turning up and giving as well as you should? Are you being the best dentist you can possibly be? Are you actually giving your heart and soul and going all in on whatever you're all in on? And that one thing, doing that process with something like a big turbulent thing like my father dying, it's still sad. And I still think about him a lot of times and I wish he was still here, but I can't control any of that. I have an alternative of whether I'm going to be really sad about that or whether I'm just going to learn the lessons that my dad would have wanted me to learn. And I'm not going to have a pity party over it.
Yeah.
And that's the choices that we make. And it's not saying that it's different to just ignoring emotions. I don't think we can do that.
No.
But to be able to understand that these are my emotions and be able to talk to myself in a way that serves.
What I really appreciate about all this is it's immensely practical, and it's obviously rooted in science, it's rooted in philosophy, it's rooted in all good gear, but it's not theory. And so for people listening, I'd really encourage you to take some notes on that last section that Luke's just shared with you, because the Control-Alt-Delete process, I think, is going to be really powerful. And I think as will the other frameworks as well. But the point I'm trying to make to everyone listening is there's going to be times in life where you do feel stress. You're going to encounter it. It's not something you can avoid. If you're going to be part of the world, you're going to encounter stress. Having the ability to recover well is going to be, I think, critical to your long-term happiness, long-term performance, long-term fulfillment in life. And so I think, like, the stuff you're sharing is absolute magic, mate. So thank you. It's really good.
My pleasure, mate. The recovery stuff's really important. One I don't think gets enough conversation is self-talk. The angel on your shoulder and the devil on your shoulder. If we've got video, I've got a little bit of a Homer Simpson there. And we've all got an angel and a devil on our shoulders. And the hassle is those little bastards sound the same.
Oh, yeah.
They definitely do sound the same. But one of the cool things about doing something like finding Carlos in one of my stress reset workshops is that when you do that, you're really clear on what he sounds like, but you're also really clear on what the devil sounds like.
Yeah.
And I had a coaching client who was the son of a CEO of a big company, and he was really struggling with life. And we started talking about self-talk and how he talks to himself. And he was telling me some of the things he'll say. And him just saying it out loud, which he'd never done before, he's gone, holy shit, I sound like Nigel. And I'm like, okay, who's Nigel? And Nigel was this little pain in the ass, little shit of a kid that bullied him in grade 9.
Oh, wow.
And all of a sudden he recognized that the devil that was saying the things about how shit you are and that self-talk that wasn't serving him was actually a remnant of being bullied in grade 9. And the moment he recognized that, it lost its power. That guy's a dickhead. Why would I listen to him? And that self-talk got way easier to ignore, way quieter, and didn't poke up anymore because he realized that was just a turbulent time in my life, and I'm going to deal with that, but he's not going to be ruling me anymore.
Yeah, wow.
And that little thing was just such a breakthrough for this guy that we can, but we've all got to sort of have a thing. You know, mine's little Luke. He sits over my left shoulder, and he's a little pigeon-toed kid from Nerang that had to try harder than everyone else to be average at everything. And he did all right. Right. Yeah. But I hear him now, but he doesn't rule what I do.
Yeah.
And that's a really cool thing, particularly if you're being brave and you're stretching yourself and you're trying new things in business and home and all of that sort of stuff, to be able to understand that, yeah, that's my devil talking to you. I'm not going to ignore it, but I am going to recognize that's the voice in my ear I don't really want to listen to. And then once you've heard that I love the idea of awareness, options, and actions. Once you've heard that voice and recognized it for what it is, then I've got an option whether I listen to it or whether I look at something else. And then I've got to action the one that's actually going to serve me. So that 3-step process of awareness, options, and actions, I think is a really cool one as well.
Mate, so much gold, so much practical information there. So ladies and gents, you're probably going to need to listen to this podcast a couple of times through. Do take some notes, because everything that Luke has shared with you is immensely practical. It's going to help you in your life. It's going to help you in your business. It's going to help you in your relationships. It's going to just help you enjoy the journey that we call life. Luke, you've been really, really generous today, mate, and I want to thank you. Ladies and gents, I'm going to encourage you to head across to Luke's website, lukemathers.com.au, grab the reset book, grab the other resources there, attend one of the workshops, do whatever you need to do, because I think this is the stuff that's actually going to be the differentiator between whether you go, whether you achieve the things you want to achieve or don't, whether you have a fulfilling life or don't. It's how you manage yourself in all of this is going to make the difference. So please do head across to Luke's website, as I said, lukemathers.com.au, grab all the gear there. As Molly Meldrum would say, do yourself a favour. And there's
showing your age now, mate.
Yeah, I know. There's two grandpa references right there, dude. So anyway, if people are going to be, who's Molly Meldrum and what the hell does that mean? But anyway, don't worry about it. Mate, thank you. You've been an absolute scholar and a gentleman, and I appreciate you.
My pleasure, buddy. Great talking to you, Jesse.
Hey everyone, it's Jesse here. I hope you enjoyed that episode of the podcast. If you're looking for some more tools, some more insights, some more inspiration to help you create a practice that you love, as well as a life that you love, well, head across to savvydentist.com and check out all the goodies that we have there waiting for you right now.